Manish Sheshra, is there. Ulla Mozin. Okay. Vita, I've already seen you. Shashir Dahal, he's there. Okay, anyway, because of time constraints, we should start now. Even one presenter is still missing. Maybe we can put him at the, or we should have, or we have to put him at the end of the session now. I would like to welcome you to our session today, which is about indigenous resilience for climate change adaptation. And I welcome the presenters, the speakers in this session. And we will start with Tandras Das, Manish Shrestha will be the second speaker. Then hopefully he will still come, Ulla Mozin. And then we have Britta Holloman. And we have Shashir Dahal. Am I right? Okay. Okay, the title, as I said today, is Indigenous Resilience for Climate Change Adaptation. We all know, and we're facing this and we're seeing this in these days, that especially indigenous people, but on the other hand, there's also a great potential as far as the knowledge of these people, how they handled in earlier times such catastrophes and how they could survive. And there's also useful and precious knowledge available. And today's presentations will be somehow, and will report on that issue, and they will also address the problems these indigenous people facing today, and how they understand and what we can do in order to improve the situation of these people. So I warmly welcome again you to our session today, and I would like to invite Tandra Das to come here. She's from Chittagong University of Engineering and Technology in Bangladesh. Welcome. And her speech will be about understanding the complex dynamics between water security, climate change, and livelihoods of the coastal communities in Bangladesh. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks for giving me the floor.
What I still need to mention, you have 10 minutes.
Okay, sure. Okay. This is Tandra Das, and good morning, everyone. I'm from Chittagong University of Engineering and Technology, Bangladesh, and my study is based on Chittagong coastal area. So from my title, if you see, understanding the complex dynamics between water security, climate change, and the livelihood of the coastal communities in Bangladesh, and especially in Chittagong. Here is my team members. Drinking water. We know that coastal people are facing severe scarcity of fresh drinking water. Due to climate change, saline water intrusion is happening in the coastal community water aquifers and soil. So they are facing water scarcity, fresh drinking water scarcity. And for this reason, we try to analyze the water quality and the relationship between how this climate change and water quality affects the water security of the people and ultimately the livelihood of the people. Here is our study area. If you see, it's located at the southeastern coast of Bangladesh and in Chittagong district, and here is our study area, Anwara Upazila. and 2 unions are located just beside the Bay of Bengal and directly affected by the salinity intrusion in this area. So here is the methodology. We have 3 targets. First one is to assess the water quality based on electrical conductivity, total dissolved solid, and chloride concentration. Then we have achieved this target through collecting water samples from different sources and assessing the water quality through laboratory test. And the complex dynamics between the climate change, water security, and livelihoods of the coastal people and their adaptation strategies we are trying to identify through focus group discussions. 3 focus groups are conducted in the local community. So here is the results. In case of water quality, we have set 4 parameters. There is pH, electrical conductivity, total dissolved solid, and chloride concentration. Here are 2 standards, WHO guidelines and Bangladesh local standards for water quality parameters. It's for drinking water quality. And the result shows that pH, in case of pH, all of the values are almost in range. But in case of electrical conductivity and total dissolved solid, all of the values exceeds the range of standards. Only pond water can be drinkable from the perspective of electrical conductivity and total dissolved solid. But in case of chloride concentration, which indicates the salinity, in case of chloride concentration, we have seen that all of the sources are far above from the standard. Where the WHO standard is 250, we have found the salinity is 2500 in shallow water, shallow tubewell. So we can see the problem. Now you'll see how it's affecting the community. In case of, we explain the problem first. Then the area where we have, the area was self-sufficient agricultural community before 45 to 50 years ago. But in recent years, 10 to 20 years, we are facing climate change and salinity intrusion. So their livelihoods are affecting. And due to change in soil quality, water quality, and rainfall, their agricultural pattern was changed and their livelihood changed, were diversified to different sources. And besides, the supply of fresh water is decreasing day by day. So what are they doing? Here we have seen the impact of salinity or climate change on agriculture. If we explain, 95% people were engaged in agriculture. As I have said that the area was an agricultural community. The community was an agricultural community. But after, due to climate change and salinity intrusion, the production declined. Before, they used to cultivate paddy for 3 times in a year. But due to lack of rainfall and adequate fresh irrigation water, they can now cultivate only 1 time. So we see that the cultivation of paddy decreased 2 times. So production reduced and people are engaged in different livelihood strategies. So as a result, barren land increased. That's a threat to food security. And therefore, agriculture has become the secondary occupation, and people try to engage in different manufacturing industries or other industries. Now, in case of drinking water, previously, Bangladesh was a less developed country, and people were unconscious, and they used to pond water, river water, as they don't have tube well. But in recent years, they have so many tube well, deep tube well, shallow tube well, for fresh drinking water. But still, they can't use the water because still the drinking water of shallow tube well or deep tube well are saline, and they can't drink it. So 50% of people still use pond water for drinking. Besides, they want to try use rainwater. and they are comfortable with rainwater. But due to lack of storage capacity, and the community is almost a poor community, so they don't have adequate storage capacity of storing rainwater, and that's why they are using pond water. Okay, as I said, that 50% use pond water, 50% use saline water. So what are the effects? When they use saline water, they face skin, then they face different skin problems and high blood pressure, gastrological problems. We have also find it from literature and also seen in our study area. And those who use pond water, as the ponds are not conserved adequately, the pond water is polluted. They use purifying tablet, but that's not adequate for purification, and that's why they are suffering from different waterborne diseases. Okay, in case of livelihood, as we said, that agricultural community has diversified, and we have said the production of paddy reduced from 3 times to 1 times. So other 2 times, what are they doing? They are unemployed. Those who are completely based on agriculture, they are unemployed for the 2 seasons. And and other people are trying to engage in different activities. And in our area, we have seen that the only activity is manufacturing activity. People are engaging in different manufacturing industry. And in Anwara Upazila, the industrial development has been increased significantly in last 10 to 15 years, just due to lack of agricultural opportunity. And what are the effect of such manufacturing industry? We know that in developing or less developed country, manufacturing industries are not maintaining proper standards, and therefore they are responsible for pollution like air, water, and soil quality. In our area, this manufacturing industry are polluting the water, especially seawater, which is responsible for death of fishes and livelihood diversity. So it's unsustainable. Here is the just shows that how coping or strategy adaptation comes. When people are facing a problem, they try to adapt it. They try to cope with it. Then in our study area, how are they coping? Here are 4 steps we can found: individual level, household level, community level, and institution level. In case of institutional individual level, some of use pond water, and some try to bring water from their industry. Who are working on the industry, they try to bring water from their industry. And at community household level, people purchase water from industry. As industry have purified the water, they sell it to the community. And people bring it, and the price is almost 1 to 1.5 USD per 100 liter. But it's very difficult to bring out the water. And besides, they try to store rainwater for further use. But it's very limited, as they don't have adequate storage capacity. At a community level, people try to use pond. All of the ponds, there is no individual level. All of the ponds are community level, like mosque pond or para or hamlet. A hamlet has a pond, and they use the pond water. At institutional level, local institution try to provide deep tube well for better water source, but it's not effective. As we've seen that deep tube well has also a high level of salinity. So what are the expectation of the community? Community expects if they store rainwater for harvesting or for drinking, they will be better. Okay. And they also want to conserve the ponds so that they can use the pond water, and provision of employment opportunities into sustainable sources. Then if we conclude, summarize my findings, that to cope with the salinity or climate change, they are trying to reduce their agricultural production, and therefore their food security, unemployment, and poverty is increasing, and drinking of pond water is affecting their health negatively, And in case of adaptation strategies, they are found rainwater, purchasing water, or communal management of ponds and diversification of livelihoods. But the effective strategies are rainwater harvesting and livelihood diversification. So if at institutional level or government level can try to help them to store rainwater harvesting or communal management of ponds or diversify their livelihoods to agricultural opportunities like agro-based industries, that would be more sustainable. Thank you. And I want to acknowledge our university for giving me fund and technical support, and local people, and obviously WSCC for giving me opportunity to stand here. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your interesting presentation, and I would like to invite you to
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation. I would like to ask you, what kind of policies do you think that the government can implement in order to solve those problems? I mean, you presented the coping strategies, but there must be something beyond that. You know, what kind of policies can be useful?
Yeah, thank you. I have said at last that what are the most effective policy, and the effective policy is focus on rainwater harvesting. If we adapt technology and better rainwater harvesting, they have rainwater in only one season. If we can store the water for the whole year, they can drink it and they can use it for agricultural purpose, then they'll be happy. And also they can livelihood, in case of livelihood, they have poverty and they are not engaging in dairy farm or that related agricultural activities. But if we promote the agro-based industries, it would be sustainable development.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a question about the rainwater harvesting measure that you provided. I want to know, is there any financial funds and technology and knowledge on how to people make some structures for rainwater harvesting? It will be done by the people or by the government, and how it will be implemented? Is there enough financial resources for such a work?
No, there is no, actually, they have no fund. So I am raising the question so that there are many NGOs that are working there. But if they focus on rainwater harvesting, that will be better. So I think the fund is needed and more research is needed. Yeah, just theoretical. And they harvest rainwater, but like a pot, large pot. In fact, some households use the water for whole year. They have 3 to 4 members, so they can harvest rainwater for the whole year. But the household which have 7 to 8 members, they can harvest the rainwater for whole year. But they want. So if we focus, then it can be good.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Following up with the past 2 questions, I was wondering, so your starting point of your study was that well, there's a change due to climate change and you somehow need to adapt it, and now you're proposing rainwater harvesting.
Yeah.
And I know very little about the region you studied, but I was wondering how robust is this solution, considering that climate events are likely to be more extreme, and there might also be longer periods of droughts? Or is that not predicted for the area you studied, or have you taken this into consideration at all?
No, they have adequate rainwater, but they can't conserve it. They have rain frequent, not frequent. Previously they have rain on 3 to 4 seasons, but now they have only 1 season or 2 seasons. But in case of 1 season, they have excessive amount of rainwater, and sometimes it becomes over raining. So that's why they said that if we conserve the water, then we can fight with the disaster also.
Thank you very much, Tandaras, for your presentation. Thank you for the questions. We are coming now to our second presenter today, Manish Shrestha. He is from Icy-Mode in Nepal. Maybe you can give the full name of Icy-Mode. It has something to do with the Himalayan mountains, right?
Sure.
As far as I know. And he will speak about building resilience to water-induced hazards in the HKA region, that's Himalayan region, right? Experience of co-developing flood forecasting system. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am Manish Shrestha from Icy-Mode, and I'm here to give a presentation on how we were successfully able to develop various flood forecasting tool with the help of stakeholders in the HKH region. Before going into the actual presentation, I would like to shamelessly promote my institute as well. So I come from Icy-Mode. The full form is International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. So we basically work at the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, which ranges from Afghanistan in the west, Pakistan, some part of India, Nepal, Bhutan, China, Bangladesh, and some part of Myanmar as well. So we work both on hardcore science like modeling, remote sensing, and also social science. So within an Icy-Mode, we have a project called Surveyor HKH. So Surveyor is a global initiative of NASA and USAID, where our motto is connecting space to village, meaning that we use Earth observation data to solve various kind of challenges. For example, in my case, for this presentation, it's on flood. Within the Surveyor HKH, we have several themes, and for this presentation, I'll be concentrating more on water resources and hydroclimatic disaster and weather and climate. So in Surveyor project, we use a concept called service planning approach, where stakeholders are at the heart of every step. So we go to the stakeholder, we try to identify what is their problem and what are their needs. Then finally, we co-develop a system or design a system based on their needs. We develop the system, we provide training, capacity building, and then our main idea is to hand over the system to the stakeholder so that even after the project ends, it gets sustained. So the first system we developed is called HiWatt. It's the High Impact Weather Assessment Toolkit. And I don't think I need to mention that the Hindu Kush Himalayan region is very much vulnerable to floods. So this is an Icy-Mode's in-house weather forecasting tool. So we provide rainfall, lightning probability, hailstorm probability, temperature, wind, 54 hours in advance. So our main target was to capture the monsoon period, but as we can see that even after the monsoon period, we're having lots of floods. So from next year, we are planning to run it 365 days a year. And if you go to this link, you can access this tool. And talking with the stakeholders, they requested us to modify the tool, and we have modified the tools so that we can capture those parameters into a local level. For example, in Nepal at municipality level, and in Bangladesh we have information up to district level. The other tool is called the stream flow prediction tool. We are using the GlowFast direct runoff, which is customized to our region. We have mapped out all the large rivers of the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, and on clicking on any of those river segments, you get a graph like this, which provides us the flood forecast up to 10 days in advance. And as I mentioned earlier, this is designed for a larger rivers, which is perennial. And we have again further customized based on the request from our stakeholders into Bangladesh portal and as well as Nepal. So the third tool is called flash flood prediction tool. The previous one was basically on the larger rivers, whereas this one is able to capture even the smaller rivers. That is very much flashy in nature. So in Nepal and in Bangladesh, compared to the larger rivers, smaller rivers are much more dangerous because the lead time, let's say, the lead time is quite less. But during our work, we were able to forecast even for the smaller rivers up to 54 hours in advance. So we use the weather forecasting tool that I mentioned earlier as an input for a hydrological model and run the model for the entire Nepal and in Bangladesh. And as previously, this is also running only during the monsoon period, but we're planning to run it for the entire year now. The final tool is called HydroSAR, which uses the Sentinel-1 data, the SAR images. And this tool is basically used to identify which areas are flooded and not flooded, as well as we are able to also identify what is the depth of floods. So this we consider as a near real time, so we get information as soon as the satellite passes to that area, so we are able to map those areas. Again, the link is there if you want to have a look later. So as I mentioned earlier, our end goal is to make sure that the system is being taken up by the stakeholders. So one example of this one is we were able to install our high-watt system in Bangladesh Meteorological Department. Second example is we are now trying to work with Practical Actions and Red Cross Society, Danish and Finnish Red Cross Society as well, which they have a very good network at the ground level. So they are also helping us to communicate our tools to a ground level. And in addition, the Armed Police Force of Nepal. So they are the first responder of any kind of disaster that happens in Nepal. So if you have seen the Netflix series called Aftershock, you have also seen the Nepal Armed Police Force coming for the rescue. So they are the first responder, and we have also provided them trainings, and they are now trying to incorporate our tools into their own curriculum. And then in Bangladesh, we are also working with FFWC, that's the Flood Forecasting and Warning Center. And this is, I would say, a success story. So we had also provided training to school teachers. So one of the school teachers, after looking into our tool, was able to provide warning to his area. And with that, he was able to save a lot of, I would say, life and properties, because there was a lot of, dozers and JCBs in those areas. So they quickly moved all those vehicles outside this flood area. You can see here. Few are still there, but they were able to save a lot of them. And finally, the key to our success is we continuously engage with the stakeholders. And we also usually align our work with their work, their mandates. For example, in FFWC has a mandate of flood forecasting. And we are able to fill up the gaps, as we all know that in the HKH region, the data is very much scarcity. And we have a good technical and social science background. And then finally, we have a good consortium. We have a good capacity within EC mode, NASA, ASC, that's the applied science team, that's the universities from US, government agencies, INGOs, and NGOs. And thank you, that was my last slide.
The audience, 1 or 2 questions, please. Yes, over there.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. I just have one small question to consider the local response to your warning system. So, do you care? I would like to know that it is automatic response. I mean, they can respond via the telephone or something like that. And do you consider the error? I mean, maybe the response information might be correct or not. And
somehow I cannot change. Okay, all those informations are in a web-based portal, but since all of the people on the ground level might not have access to laptops or computers, so we are currently working on developing a mobile app based on this tool. And I'm not
Can we have it on the screen? Again, the presentation?
So I knew this validation question would come, so I have hidden some.
Good.
So you can see I have done both quantitative and qualitative analysis on validation. So we use this basic R square, RMSE and all those stuff, this skill score for validating our tools, as well as qualitative, because in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region, as I mentioned earlier, we don't have a lot of data, observed data. So for qualitative, we use the event base. For example, on August 19, 2022, there was a lot of lightning in Nepal. And on a side note, around 100 people lose their life in Nepal just because of lightning strike. And we were able to predict that there was going to be lightning all over Nepal, like 54 hours in advance. That's one. And the other one is for the floods, especially the flash flood, where the smaller river never has any observable station. So there was a huge flood in August 28, which was also captured by our tool 54 hours in advance.
Thank you very much. So one last brief, urgent question.
My question is, in brief, is what is the role of stakeholders in flood forecasting? I mean, they are the user of information, or they can predict by themselves. For example, you mentioned a teacher can use this app and to predict the flood. How it can be?
Okay, so for example, so this is one of the web portal that I'm showing here for Nepal. So the school teacher has an access. Actually, everybody has an access. You don't need to register anything. So you just click on any of those river segments here, and then you can see a graph here. Right? So based on this graph, you can see at this particular point there is very high discharge in the river. So there is an indication of having a very high, there's a chance of having floods in those areas. So everybody has an access. So as I mentioned, there is the link. Even right now you can go to this link and then access the information. No, this is all automatic. They are using.
Thank you very much. Meine Schwester. We are coming now to the third presenter. I see he's now here with us. Ullah Mozin, he is from Quaid-e-Azam, if I'm right in the spelling, University in Pakistan. And he will report about indigenous resilience to climate change and water management in Swat Valley, Kimber Patakumava, Pakistan. You will be better in spelling it. Okay, the floor is yours. Please.
No. Yeah, this one. Okay. Thank you so much for having me and giving me opportunity to present my work in this conference. Is it working? Okay. So I will talk about indigenous resilience to climate change and water management in Swat Valley, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan. Swat Valley is a district in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province in Pakistan, located in the Afghan borderland. And yeah, okay, sorry. So my research questions are my research questions are how indigenous knowledge helps local people to adapt to climate change, and what strategies do local people use to cope with the climate change and water management, and how local people use their indigenous knowledge to adapt to climate change and water management, and how is the local knowledge learned and transmitted within the community. So the many writers and philosophers they have worked on resilience. What is resilience? But to me, it is the general characteristics that affects the capacity of individuals, communities, and systems to survive, adapt, and grow in the face of stress and shocks, and even transform when conditions require it. So it is the ability to resile from or spring back from stress or shock. So in Pakistan in 2010 and most recently in 2022, the flood affected most of the agricultural land, and many infrastructure was washed away by the flood. So how they were resiled to this shock. So Swat is actually a rich region which is cultural and historical, which has a cultural historical background. It is one of the important archaeological site. Many there are Buddha statues over there, and many people from Nepal, Sri Lanka, and other areas come for worship over there. And it is very Swat is very historical, has a very historical background. So the devastating flood in the summer 2010, and before that Swat was also affected by the Taliban insurgency. There was a military operation, and after that flood came, and most recently again in 2022 flood destroyed most of the agriculture sectors. So I will talk how they mitigate such kind of how they use their local knowledge in water management. Okay, so I will come to the methodology. So this study was conducted in Lower Swat, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Pakistan, and purposive sampling technique was used for the data collection, and a total number of 23 participants were interviewed through semi-structured interviews, and data was transcribed and was analyzed through MaxQDA, and thematic analysis was done. So let me come to the result and discussion. So look at the picture. The people are sitting in a hujra. They are actually the Jarga members. Jarga is a council of elders which resolve disputes and community problems, and they sit in a hujra. Hujra is a male guest house. Actually female are not allowed to this hujra system, but I will not talk about the gender dimension of it. So they talk about and work for different kind of disputes and any community problem, water issues, everything. So they collect in the community hujra, and and how they work, like every Friday whole community work in the irrigation channels. They clean the irrigation channels, and they work in the springs. There are many springs, and they clean up the springs, and they take care of the springs in the area. And they also conduct a yearly tree plantation, at least 10 to 15 trees every household plant in the area. And they also spread awareness in the community. And they also discuss the coping mechanism like food security, animals, climate, grain storage, because after the flood in 2010 and now they store their food. They have adopted like they have the climate storage in the community hujras, and they store food for the poor people who don't have their land. So this such kind of strategies they follow in the area. So about water management, like Swat is famous for their springs. There are many springs in the area, and like look at the first picture. These are the picture of springs called Nagoha Spring, which is very sacred spring, and it is famous for the healing purpose. People from many areas and very far-flung areas come to heal their skin problems and stomach problem, liver problem. It is famous for these purposes. So the water is flowing in the mosque. The first picture is showing that water is flowing in the mosque. This is the ablution area. In the mosque, they don't have tap water over there. So they do ablution and then go for the worship prayers in the mosque. And the second picture, then the water passes by and there's a lake in which the community people and other visitors take bath and enjoy. And then in the third picture, there are washrooms. Like many visitors come and they bath over there for the healing purpose, and the local community members use these washrooms for bathing. They just put the cloth on the doors and they just bath over it. They don't have such kind of washrooms in their houses. And then after that, the water passes and it runs 3 to 4 water mills. There are floor mills in which they bring their grains and they make the floor in these water mills. So how they manage the water over there. Okay, so and beside that there is a place for women which is called Gudar, which is a women's spring. Men are not allowed in this spring. They bring their utensils to wash in this spring, and in the second picture they also wash clothes by that wooden bat. They hit the clothes and clean their clothes over there. So people, Swati people, like people of Swat, experience frequent changes which are agriculture, socio-economic, cultural, environmental in nature. But after flood and militancy, and they destroyed agriculture sector, crops, cultivated irrigation channels, springs and orchards. And Swat is famous for gardens. So due to flood and climate change, they adopted different indigenous preventive and mitigative measure, and local people use indigenous knowledge to inform their decision when responding to the climate change and water management. So like developmental projects, like one of the presenters said that there are no fundings and all these things, but in Swat the situation was changed. Like there was militancy, and soon after that in 2010 flood came. What happened? Many developmental projects started in the area. Every different kind of donor agencies like USAID, ADB, and local governmental projects were working on the water schemes, because after the flood there was a problem of water. So thousands of water schemes projects started working in the Swat Valley, and they started digging the boring wells, tube wells, and they distributed pipelines for every household, and due to which many springs dried up. They decreased its water discharge in the area. The springs were okay. So after look at this picture. This is the picture of the spring. That was a women's spring. Women were coming. It was actually a knowledge sharing place for the women in the local community. But after these developmental projects, look at the second picture. What happened to that spring? Like they put water motors in the spring, hundreds of water motors in such a spring, and it was dried up due to these kind of projects. So okay, let me conclude it. So Swati people serve as a potential resources that help strengthen the resilience of traditional communities to climate change and water management. There is a need to understand such local knowledge systems which govern risk management practices in indigenous communities, and the state should recognize the importance of such knowledge system and integrate them into water management and disaster risk plans and programs. And the integration of indigenous and scientific knowledge is important for future studies to deal with climate change and water management, to assess communities and successfully responding to approach climate change. Thank you so much. I will appreciate your comments and questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any questions? Please, one or two. Yeah, Lara.
Yes, thanks for the presentation. I was wondering first, what would you recommend as a scientist now? And did you also ask the local communities what they would recommend in terms of, well, now springs are drying up, and obviously the, let's say, governmental response to flooding, deleted local knowledge, so to say. So maybe you can reflect on what's your recommendation, and did you ask the people what their recommendation was?
Yeah, so and Swat, they were using their local knowledge, how they were managing their water, how they were managing their water. Okay, like as I showed in the picture, that they were managing their water, the spring water especially. But after developmental projects, so they also realized, because these many springs that were sacred for them, it was considered a living heritage, a cultural heritage for them, because they had emotional attachments with that springs, because they consider it like these springs are sacred for us. It is for the healing purpose. It heals the diseases, skin diseases, and all these things. But due to these pipelines and everything, everything finished, and the springs are decaying. Actually, the cultural heritage is decaying. So I am suggesting that the researchers should work on it, to preserve this living heritage, because these people have their emotional attachment, their memories attached, their folklore attached, folk stories are attached to these springs, but it is decaying due to these developmental projects.
Thank you. One other question?
You mentioned that there is a powerful community in that area. I wanted to know about the water rights, how they allow the government to have development works without attention to the water rights in the springs of the belongs to the people. So how they resolve this issue? So how they can interfere to the people rights? Thanks.
Actually, as I mentioned, there is a Jarga system. It is actually an informal justice system, a council of elders. So they manage everything, like they resolve, they also get, they call a Jarga, like council of elders, and they speak about this, and then they talk to the government official that what should we do for this. So like this, they talk to the government and officials.
Okay, one last question, briefly. Not the case. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I would like to come to the next presenter, Britta Höllermann. She is from the United Nations University in Germany. And she will speak about the use of small-scale water infrastructure as an adaptation strategy to climate change, a case study in Germany.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. So, yeah, welcome, good morning. I'm proud that I'm here on behalf of my master's student, Christina Heinzel, who did all of the study but was not able to join this conference in person. So, yeah, I take over, and it's all of her success, what I present here. And she's now working at the university in the United Nations University, and I'm, just to correct, sorry, I'm from the University of Osnabrück, so just to let you know. Yeah, so we are now jumping to a German case study, and also we have problems with drought, especially in the eastern part of Germany, and due to climate change, there's an increasing drought risk there. Oh, it's not working, sorry. So you can see also what I can see. And that because it's a high agricultural area, so there are substantial economic losses due to those droughts. And so adaptation measures are needed. And interestingly, in this area, there are existing really small-scale dams, which have been used in the former GDR, for irrigation purposes. So this is a kind of indigenous knowledge, but this was neglected after the German unification in 1990. And so they were not in use, they were just used for recreation purposes and nothing else. And then the Thüringer Fernwasserversorgung, which is the TFW, it's kind of a local water agency, took over the operation, and they are now responsible for those reservoirs, and they're now thinking of decommissioning them or maybe put them again into use to supply agriculture with irrigation water during drought periods. And they're really small-scale reservoirs. You see the numbers there. And yeah, in Germany it's not possible to build new big reservoirs, so the question is of yeah, setting them a new standard here to reactivate the small-scale reservoirs. And so the aim of this case study was to look into the hydrology and into the water demand of the plants and how this fits, and if the small-scale reservoirs can support agricultural production in this area in periods of drought. And for this, the student used the WEEP model. It's a water aviation and planning tool. It's a really nice model. I will have some words on it in the next slide. And we want to assess the potential adaptive capacity of those small reservoirs. And with this kind of overview study, she wanted to provide this for the stakeholders as a guidance for further decision making. So the WEEP model, it balances on the one hand the physical hydrological processes, so you can have a good hydrological model inside with a bucket approach and a soil moisture model in it. And on the other hand, you can also model the water demand depending on the plants which are growing. You can include, and this is very specific for this model, different scenarios. And on the one hand, we had scenarios for climate scenarios, and we choose the Canadian climate model for a reason I will show in the next slide, for two RCP scenarios. And then we used some different irrigation scenarios also. We have calibrated the model, and it was okay-ish, I would say. I think there can be still improvement in the hydrological model part. However, the calibration data was very hard because most of the inflow stream was only guessed by the people working there, not really measured, and it was hard to combine this with model data. So first results showed, of course, which is not surprising, that water demand is increasing due to higher temperatures, and that is increasing in all climate change scenarios, and especially in this Canadian model with the RCP 8.5, and this was highest, so no surprise there. When we looked at this on this graph here, this is about the reliability of the reservoirs. You see that especially in the Canadian model, the reliability is decreasing to roughly 80% for the smallest reservoir. So maybe one conclusion could be that the smallest reservoir is too small, so we kept it out of the further analysis and only worked with the remaining Polen-Letzendorf catchment, which is combining two smaller catchments. And we decided for the Canadian climate model here to present the results because it shows the extreme events. So you can really say maybe it would be better to choose another model which is more appropriate to the region, but we choose here to see really the extremes for communicating the results. So other key finding was, of course, the higher water demand. And you see here, this is the water demand in the different scenarios, and the relative soil moisture. And then you see the dashed lines show an irrigation scenario. So when we activate the small reservoirs, and especially during the period when the growing starts and needs a lot of water, we can supplement here, and this has an effect on the crop efficiency and the harvest. So even though the crop water need doubles, we can be mitigated and even allow an increase in crop production by 6 to 15 or 13%. This is what was said. So, however, what we should say and take into account, this is only one side of the coin, and it's a little focus on the water availability and one component in complex decision making. And it can provide insight views into future climatic changes, but it has to be coupled with the decision makers and especially with the farmers. So in this study, Christina was working together with a local water agency who was interested, and now the next step would be to get in contact with the farmers and to see what their needs are. And maybe as an outlook, so there was not done any economic analysis, and this would be very important to look that into. But it made an important contribution to look further into the potential of those reservoirs, and it was also acknowledged by the Turing Environmental Agency. It was presented there, and they now acknowledge it in their further development plans there. And so this is the first study, and yeah, it says that it could be used as a reference, but further studies are needed, especially in this economic part. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation. And now it's open for the one or other question, please. Yeah. Can we have a mic?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It's really interesting to me. And I have one question related to, we know that small infrastructure would have less impact than the bigger one. So do you consider that the many small infrastructure might have the convoluted impacts than the larger one, and especially to the ecology and land use? Do you have any consideration in your study about that?
The land use or the crop selection, you mean?
I mean that we know that for sure the small infrastructure would have less impact than the larger one. So to reach the similar, similar effects, so maybe we need more small infrastructure. So in that case, many small infrastructure might have bigger impacts than one larger one. So I mentioned not only economic aspect, but also ecology and also land use and many social aspects the other. Yes.
Okay, yeah, in Germany it won't be any case that there will be a larger, so if you want to use some of this you need to go for a smaller infrastructure, and still it is already there because it was used in former times, and now it's only the question if it's feasible to, or is it reliable to reactivate those reservoirs. And as the study showed, it can support, especially during the beginning of the growing season. And now we need to talk to the farmers if they really need this, or if they can have another choice in crop selection, that they maybe go for more drought resilient crops. This is but not part of this story.
Any other question?
Thank you very much for the nice presentation, Firas Al-Janabi from the ABCD Center. Most of these studies, they are depending on the soil moisture. And for this study, I don't know which kind of sensors you use for the soil moisture and which kind of depth have been considered, and the technology is also plays a significant role. Thank you.
Yeah, the soil moisture was modeled. So it was used, land use data were used, and all this different stratification, and then we had a soil moisture or hydrological model with two buckets, and the upper layer and the down and the lower layer, and we calculated the soil moisture. We didn't do any measurements, and we kind of tried to relate it to what has been measured before, but we didn't calculate and calibrate it. The soil moisture. That was no time in that little.
It should be done, okay.
Yeah, it should be done, but yeah, focus was different.
Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, actually, my question is not only for your presentation. It is general aspects of use of small reservoirs for adaptation to climate change and drought. Your research is valuable, but it is just focused on the engineering and modeling aspects. But for such a, if we want to have a comprehensive assessment, we should have evaluate the side effects. As other question also mentioned, these interventions will have upstream, downstream interaction, inside users, water rights system. If you make these reservoirs for a short term is okay for a 1 month round, 2 month round. But if they want to stay there for a long time, forever, it should be studied very comprehensive. This is good. This is for the first step, but we need many sustainability issues, many social issues, and economic also issues. So for the first step, this has a single solution, but it needs many aspects to be considered. And also we have a lot of literature on the use of small scale reservoirs. Did you use that information before? For example, I was in CGR challenge program on water and food. There was many projects in this challenge, especially in the Africa. We can use the lesson learned from these systems. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a valuable comment. Yeah, in this case, the infrastructure is already there, but not currently in use. And the question is if to reactivate. So there is still water running in, and there are the effects of this this little damming of those waters is already there. So there won't be a bigger change when it's reactivated. But of course, you need to look at the impacts when it's being more heavily used, but you've seen they're very, very small, those reservoirs, and can only be for a short-term period and supporting the agricultural production in this area.
Any other question? Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. I'm curious about what happened during the period between the reunification and the taking of the infrastructure by the water authority in Thuringen, if I'm right. Mm-hmm. So this infrastructure was used, and what was the governance and the management during that period, or it wasn't used during that time?
Yeah, I think there has been a large transformation in this area with all those agriculture was changing, and then the reservoirs were not used anymore for agricultural production, but it was unclear whom they belonged to, so they were just there and nothing happened with them, and they were used for recreation and fishing, for example. So they were not decommissioned. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. Thank you very much, Britta Hollemann. Now we come to the next presenter. Yeah, clapping hand. Shashir Dahal. He is from the Himalaya College of Engineering in Nepal, and he will report about elucidating the importance of climate resilience water safety plan for stone water spouts in Latipur district, Nepal. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Andreas, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Over the next few minutes, I'll be trying to highlight the importance of climate resilient water safety plan for the traditional stone water spouts in Lalitpur district, which is one of the districts in the Kathmandu Valley. So starting with the background information, the access to improved sources of drinking water sources have increased over the years. By the end of MDG period, the coverage was 84%. However, as of 2019, it has increased to 97%. However, the recent joint monitoring program report shows that only 18% of the total population in Nepal have access to safely managed water services, which are near the premises, available when needed, and free from E. coli, that is various microbiological impurities. So like many other highly urbanized regions, Kathmandu Valley is no exception in terms of water stress. the potable water supply can currently meet only 22% and 46% of the total demand during dry and wet seasons respectively. As such, the management of traditional knowledge on spring sources, well known as stone spouts or hiti or dhungedara in local language, can ensure the availability of safely managed drinking water, particularly for the people of lower and lowest wealth quintile who depend upon small scale business such as tea stalls or small restaurants for their livelihoods, and also dependent upon water from those sources for the business. So the stone spouts are recharged through shallow aquifer. The schematic diagram of the stone spout is shown here. From the catchment it enters into the intake, and from the conveyance system, which is either the piped flow or the open channel flow to the tap points. However, only 200 out of 573 stone spouts in Kathmandu are currently operational, are in the flowing conditions, and a substantial number of them in the Lalitpur districts are in filthy, unhygienic conditions. So the objective of this study was to find the existing system of stone spouts in Lalitpur districts and to explore the impact of urbanization and climate change on the water flow, as well as to unravel different water quality parameters. The study area, we selected Lalitpur district, and we selected 20 stone spouts based on the consultation with World Health Organization and Lalitpur municipality, who had the experience of conducting similar studies after the earthquake in 2015. We selected the stone spout in such a way that we have a diverse knowledge on the catchment area in which those stone spouts belong to, different flow conditions and different water quality parameters. For the methodology, we conducted interviews with local people having knowledge on the history of stone spout development. We collected quantitative as well as qualitative data, which includes number of users, water flow rate, perception of people towards urbanization and climate change on the water flow conditions, and their experience to deal with various issues, as well as their recommendations. For water quality, we used WACTEC kit, a portable kit to identify various physical, chemical, as well as microbiological parameters. For microbiological parameters, we conducted E. coli test with membrane filtration technique. Besides that, we also did land use land cover analysis with data fetched from regional land cover monitoring system, and also the trend analysis using man-candle test for the rainfall data. As a result, a risk matrix has been developed considering the existing risk on various components of water supply systems. The risk varies from 1 to 5, where the higher value indicates the higher risk, and the risk differs from one community to another. For the developed region or highly populated region, the E. coli concentration was much higher compared to the pristine catchment, such as the forested catchment. So the hazard associated with spring box as well as the connection system, where the spring box is open or the conveyance system is the open channel flow, the surface flow is more likely to enter to the system, thus degrading the quality with increased turbidity and E. coli concentrations. Although the turbidity value was not a great issue in most of the stone spouts, about 70% of the selected stone spout delivered water containing E. coli. Besides, there was an issue regarding the decline in water flow rate over the past few decades, and we just try to see the change in the land use pattern. So the built-up area has increased by 16.5 kilometers square at the loss of forested area as well as grasslands. So the urbanization as well as the destruction of the state canal, which delivered water to those systems, could be attributed as the major cause for the decline in water flow. besides some highly populated regions have reported excessive withdrawal of water from shallow aquifer, which could be considered one of the issues, and also the decline, varying rate in the rainfall pattern. So it indicates about 2.74 to 27 mm per year, the decline in rainfall. However, the climate change issues and rainfall patterns may not be considered as the sole reason for the decline in water flow rate. The combined effect of urbanization and the withdrawal of water could be attributed as the combined effort may be considered the major cause for the decline in water flow rate. So we replicating the studies and the implementation of water safety plan in various piped water systems, we have proposed 7 steps for the water safety plan, which starts with water safety team formation, which includes the concept of citizen science approach as well as the engagement of local community, which is followed by describing the system, which aims at helping local people understand the different components of the water scheme they are using, followed by hazard identification, risk analysis and control measures, and then the action for improvement. And at the crux of the WSP implementation lies monitoring and verification, which suggests we need to collect data on quality as well as quantity for at least twice a year, and which is finally followed by the review and revision of the documents to share the knowledge through the entire process. So to conclude, some initiatives have been taken by the local agencies for the cleanliness. However, the presence of E. coli in majority of water samples indicate that we need to underscore the necessity of implementing this framework, as well as the list of hazardous events that has been identified for Kathmandu Valley could also be replicated for other regions of Nepal, particularly for the spring shed management. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for interesting presentation. We would like now to ask you, the audience, to ask a question, 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, please.
Very interesting presentation. I don't think I need a mic. I hope you can all hear me. It's a very interesting presentation, but I was wondering, you were talking about the water supply, the safety risk of supply. But I only heard about hazard, talking about hazard. Whatever is the rainfall damage, what is the leak through the tap, or the leak to the boiling, or this depends on that.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, people directly drink water from those sources. They don't go with any sort of disinfection process. So as a team, as a local team, they should promote such chlorination or other disinfection measures. So that would be done by the team itself. So that is what we are trying to promote, and I think the local government as well as the local teams should take such initiatives. Here we are dealing more about the framework to help them get engaged in such initiatives. Yeah.
Very much. Any other questions?
It's not the case. Thank you very much. So, thanks again to the presenters. So we more or less through with our session today, but I think we should not walk out with some reflections about this session, and I would like to address myself to the presenters. And we know that, and we all know that, unfortunately, there is a variety of affecting resilience in indigenous areas. So there's not only one solution. And we have seen many models are available. One or other is working, one or other is useful or not. A lot of data is needed, but also a lot of knowledge, indigenous knowledge as well. My question to you is, can we make it really resilient? Very simple question, but I think there is some...
I think the community should be resilient to some extent, but complete resilience, there is some question.
I don't think we can achieve 100% resilience in any
Severity
case.
can be reduced.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Can we make it resilient? Can we make it? Question to the audience? Not really, yeah, not really. And that is what I expected. So no, got good news, because as we see in these days, and what is the progress in climate change, and we see the catastrophes where we have a very shorter period of time where catastrophes happen, and also the reaction time is much more shorter in that case. And I mentioned that yesterday as well. We are, as human beings in all areas, all corners in the world, we are not anymore in a position to be preventive. That's the bad news. In my perspective, we are in a position just only to be reactive. Yeah, so we are facing these catastrophes, as I said, in very, very short period of times. And so I think it is really a hard job to do to reach 100% of resilience. Yeah, and I think that will be the challenge of the future for us, for human beings. My message is, and to conclude is, we can only tackle these problems if we go ahead in very close cooperation with each other around the world. I think without this close cooperation among scientists, but also among politicians, we will definitely fail. So that's my message, and I would say that if this is will not happen, these kind of cooperations, close cooperations, and this dialogue, we will have a problem to solve the problems.
Yeah, thank you. I might agree, but I still have some hope. When I saw yesterday the session on vulnerability assessment, to see that there's a diversity of people who are more resilient or less resilient, and I think outcomes of this conference can identify who are the most vulnerable, and I think there we can also put our efforts more into to make them more resilient, that they decrease their vulnerability. So I think this is also maybe one positive hope.
To turn it into positive, of course we should not give up. That's also a positive message. Anyway, there is some hope, and I think we should take the opportunity to work together and to cooperate. Thank you very much for being here, for listening, and for again to the presenters. Thank you very much.